It really finds its gusto when you get past the hill. Oh man. Woo! Hee-haw! Is it left or straight? I guess straight.
At this bend, pull off to the right.
Okay. Still got it. Not dead yet. Welcome to a special Father's Day edition of The Rich Dawn, where eternal beatitude begins in this life. I'm Kyle Dean, and today we've got back with us Jake Mrugalski.
Hey.
My man.
What's going on?
Doing great, man. Fresh off of a birthday. We're celebrating his birthday, and we're also celebrating the joy of being dads.
Yeah.
So,
thanks for having me on again. It was a pleasure being there last time. I've been following the podcast since.
Yeah,
and
I'm
hooked. I'm definitely hooked, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity to, keep this up. So
absolutely, man. Yeah. And wedding season's kicking up right now, so check out JM Videography. You've got all kinds of good stuff coming up. I mean, I think you said you're almost like booked for the season already, right? I mean,
yeah, it's going to be a busy summer.
You excited about that?
Yeah, it's going to be a busy summer. So probably
awesome.
nothing else I could probably get in before the next year. But yeah, so
all of the love has been made.
Right. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for to have the work and get to continue to do a hobby that I love. And
absolutely. Yeah. And on behalf of all the people who hired you, they're thrilled to have you, man.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking forward to that work. And yeah, man, I'm super excited about this episode in particular because, we decided let's just really roll with this like special theme of Father's Day. Obviously usually I publish on Fridays, but but this one's going to be out for the Sunday. And so there's a lot to pour over that's relevant to that, obviously in like the religious and spirituality component of things. You think of our great Saint Joseph, who has really grown in popularity recently. Father Don Calloway and others have really helped put him back on the map.
Right.
But then, of course, I mean, the ultimate is God the Father, which is, which Saint Joseph emulates. And, it remains to be seen when God the Father is going to have his day in the liturgical calendar, because there is no feast of God the Father.
Right. Yeah.
There's never ever been one. I've heard.
Never really thought of that.
Isn't it wild? Yeah, I've had priests say like, that could happen some century.
Right.
And whenever it does happen, it's going to be pedagogically important for church history, if and when that's God's will. Remains to be seen. But regardless, fatherhood is an incredible gift. It's something that, it's one of those like building blocks of all of civilization that, you really need to have a healthy masculinity in order to have a healthy society. So look forward to getting into that with you, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Me too.
Especially as a newer dad, you've got some fresh insights that are, pertinent to even just like the day to day, right? Like, what's it like changing diapers, man? You love it?
Oh man, it's definitely been a shift. It's been a shift. Really, I think the main thing that, is just kind of a shell shock at first is just, how little free time you have once that baby's born and once you bring them home, and it's an incredible, beautiful moment. And, I wouldn't miss any of it, and I don't have any regrets, but it really is the truth that like your free time, like the things you used to do, kind of have to take a back seat for a while as you kind of adapt to the new dynamic and, having a new family member that you're responsible for. And so it's been a challenge, as it is challenging for all new parents, but a huge blessing as well. So
absolutely. Yeah. And it just brings us that step closer to the selflessness and the absolute utter gift of self, like the self-sacrifice that goes into just the highest form of relationship. And it's just incredible how God designed it that way, that, some of it you may or may not actually want to do, but regardless, out of necessity, if nothing else, you really get in the zone of like the other.
Right. Yeah.
You know, like, and there's just, honestly, it's one of those gifts that unless perhaps you're called to the religious life, that really we're kind of like all designed to experience in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And what a blessing and a joy it is to experience it in its true, raw, natural form as we both are blessed to do, huh?
Right.
So let's get into all of that. But before we do, man, I don't know if you're down to just check out this incredible scenery that God has given us.
Yeah.
This backdrop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I know this is one of your, I don't know what, we didn't really kind of talk before we went on about if we want to dox where we are or whether you want to keep it a secret, but what I can share, I know this is like, this is a place that has a lot of significance for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel comfortable sharing where we are because any people local to the Western New York area should definitely check this out. We're at Chestnut Ridge Park in Orchard Park, New York. Right. And Kyle alluded to the significance of this place. This is actually the place where my now wife, Sarah, and I had our very first date. And it's also, fast forward years later, the place that I proposed to her, when I asked her to marry me. So, and Kyle and I have been here several times in the past,
yes.
just to celebrate each other's friendship and have a good time.
Birthdays.
Yeah,
that's
birthdays,
like a theme.
yeah.
That's a theme.
Yeah, we always love to go for a hike or go longboarding, skateboarding,
yes.
whatever it is. And so maybe you guys will see some of that.
Oh, shoot.
But, yeah, so
special edition.
Right. If you want to, we could kind of show where we're at.
And, yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, let's get this camera going here.
Yeah.
So we're at what's colloquially, let me rephrase that. So we're at the 100 Steps. This is kind of in the heart of Chestnut Ridge. Another famous landmark in this area that you might be familiar with if you live in the area is the Eternal Flame, which is like a natural gas reserve under a waterfall that when you light it, it will stay lit for an extended period of time with the water running right over it. So that's a cool thing too. I don't know if we'll run into that, but
I was just reading a new article about that recently, randomly, and it was like emphasizing that flame has been going for thousands of years.
Yeah, it's insane.
Incredible.
So, I mean, if we could kind of go through a little here, as you can see, the elements have not been kind to here, but it's still standing however many years later.
Au naturel.
Whoa. A little slippage.
Nice catch, nice catch.
I don't think it's probably 100 steps anymore.
This all counts as one giant slip and slide.
This actually brings me back. I filmed, back when I started getting into videography, I was filming like a vlog series, and my friend Anthony, whom you know, he was in my wedding.
Oh yeah.
Came here, and we kind of discovered it for the first time, had an amazing experience. We actually said a chaplet of Divine Mercy, because there was just some things going on in our life that we needed our Lord's intercession with. And
absolutely.
I mean, there's just so many memories here that are of significance. So,
Jesus, I trust in you.
Yeah, beautiful.
Love the waterfall. You got the babbling brook.
Right,
notes.
Yeah, that noise is very calming.
Absolutely, man. Very good for meditation.
Yeah, but we could check out, the woods here are beautiful as well.
Yeah. There's so much that could be said about the joy of fatherhood and the importance of, true, authentic masculinity, and what that kind of a witness can do for the church, for the world, for society writ large. And
yeah, you want to just walk through? This is beautiful right now.
Let's do it. Let's go. So, kicking off this reflection, well, first and foremost, just showing some love for the birthday, and then we can focus on fatherhood. What was the most exciting part about your birthday this year?
So my wife actually had everything planned out. We went away for the weekend. We did a safari, kind of a little bit out of the way from where we live. where the, you know, animals come up to your car and you feed them like they're a giant buffalo and elk and ostriches, and it was really cool. My son, who's about 1 now, was not a huge fan of the giant buffalo shoving its face into the car window. He was mortified, but he really liked the petting zoo afterwards. So.
Learn them while they're young. Good old-fashioned trauma.
Oh, man.
They had a petting zoo, though?
Yeah, they had a little petting zoo for the kids.
What kind of animals for that?
It was, you know, like your typical llamas, donkeys, baby goats, and everything.
Classic.
But yeah, so
that's adorable.
Thanks for asking. It was a fantastic birthday.
Did you have any of those like viral moments where like an animal flipped your vehicle over?
Not quite.
I don't think you'd be so chill if that were the case.
Yep, but I did get some shots of Noah, my son, being scared in 4K, 60 frames a second. So I'll put that in slow motion, and that'll be good.
Be good to your dad, Noah. That could come back in 20 years. No, that's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, with Father's Day weekend coming up, you know, it definitely puts you in more of a reflective state of like, you know, kind of evaluating like, this is my vocation, you know, that God chose me for, along with my marriage. And, you know, I'm learning, you know, obviously becoming a father, like what a huge responsibility that is, but how rewarding that it can be, you know, and we don't always ever do everything perfect, but
no, definitely not. Like,
but yeah, I mean, it's
not even daily.
Yeah, you know, wouldn't trade it for anything, you know, just having that unconditional love and like seeing like someone that you brought into this world, like, you know, out of love in your vocation and in marriage. And I mean, it's an incredible thing.
It really is. And it's amazing how God designed it so that they're like incredibly beautiful and incredibly sweet and innocent and just entirely needy. Like,
right.
They like, that beauty becomes really important on an instinctive level for us to get pulled through those really long nights. Those, I'm sure you've by now experienced the diaper change where it kind of goes up the back and
oh yeah, yep, the blowouts, the crying,
oh yeah,
you know, it really does stink that they can't verbally communicate. Interpreting a single, you know, cry, a single sound can be challenging at times. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Are you tired? Like, what's the deal, yo?
That's where the feminine genius comes in. Like these women, it sounds like the same cry to us sometimes, but it can mean like 20 different things. And they're like, oh, yep, that's exactly what that is. Nap time. Like, really? It's already noon? Okay.
All I can say is God bless mothers.
Oh, dude.
This
should be a Mother's Day special because you deserve it all the time.
Seriously. I mean, the things that they do, oh man.
It is unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, without my wife, I would not be here today. Absolutely. With Kyle, I don't know where I'd be.
Yeah.
But
that being said, you had your day, ladies. This is Father's Day. Which way should we go? This way or this way, or?
Let's take it over this way a little bit.
Here?
Yeah,
okay.
Cross over this little stream.
You know, that actually brings me to something that I was going to bring up. Like, all joking aside, and of course, you know, deference where deference is due for the lovely women in our lives, but it really does seem like masculinity is under attack nowadays. Not to bring it to that level, but
sure.
I mean, I'm not the one that done brung it. I'm just the one that done acknowledge it. You know, like, so, and part of that attack is, you know, like kind of like the demasculinization, is that the word? Yeah. Or emasculating, the emasculating of men. You know, this idea of like, of competitiveness between the sexes.
Right.
I mean, all the way down to obviously it's just gotten so interesting out there, like where people struggle genuinely with like identity.
Right.
And it's like, you know, do we even know what true masculinity means anymore? Is it fluid, like this brook? Is it or is it more concrete? Is it, are there universal norms that we can look to in order to say, I think that's the bar.
Yeah.
And let's try to hold the bar as opposed to conforming the bar back into our own, fleeting whims. And so with that, I think it is important for us to celebrate masculinity for the unique gift that it brings.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess the first thing to do is kind of maybe like establish what our definition is of masculinity,
Sure.
right? So I'm curious to hear your, official take on that.
Steak, Rocky,
Right.
Mosin Nagants and K-bars, skydiving.
Right,
I don't
right.
know. I mean, there's a
Right.
lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I would think just, if we're looking at it from, the perspective of vocations, right, as a father and as a husband, and that is, that it's our responsibility as the patriarchs of our respective families to, be a protector of our family, to be a provider of our family, and to secure their places in heaven through our education to our children, and as well as through our actions and demonstrating what it is to be Christ-like, the perfect representation,
Right.
and
Of masculinity.
yeah. So I mean, I think if we really boil it down to its core building blocks, that's what it is. It's just being Christ-like.
Yes. I just realized it would look really beautiful to get this brook while we're talking
Yeah,
too.
absolutely.
I'm just gonna
There's just a slope here.
swing. Yes.
Make sure I got some good footing here.
Right.
Eh.
You just used $1 million word in that definition that deserves its own definition, and that's patriarchy. That's a taboo in certain aspects of society, which is really actually, like, all joking aside, a tragedy, because if you actually think about, obviously patriarchy is like, a recognition that men are the head, really, actually. And that's something that, in accordance with natural law and biblical design, like, that's never going to get usurped.
Right.
As much as the world, the flesh, and the devil will try, and of course they do, they wage war every single day. But I remember in my theological studies being very humbled by just a different way of thinking about patriarchy. And it's really basic. It goes back to appreciating the covenants, the relationship that God enters into with man, and the progression of the covenants over time. Right? Like with the first covenant is the Adamic covenant, where it's like flesh of my flesh, bone of my bone. Like there was this marriage covenant between Adam and Eve. And then you had with the Noahic covenant, it went from a marriage to a household, because in the ark you had like 4 families, right? 4 men and 4 women, the wives. And then from there, from a household, you had, a tribe with Abraham. And then from the tribe with Moses, the Mosaic covenant, you have basically like a nation, because you have 12 tribes, which makes up a nation. And then, of course, with the Davidic covenant, it was international, because, all the nations came and communed with Israel.
Right.
And then Jesus blows it. I mean, he just like transcendentalizes everything, where we went from international to universal. Right? It's for the whole universe with the Eucharistic covenant.
Right.
But what you see in that progression is you see God's love for mankind entering into relationship with us, starting with that healthy, complementary but distinct relationship between the masculine and the feminine, and then it progressing from there. And what does it progress into? Is that patriarchy.
Right.
Patriarchy just means a group of family members who love each other.
Yeah, and I think that the definition, or the way that people use that term now has really been skewed. I mean, it's conveyed as being like an oppressive term of, that these men are in positions of power, and that they use that power to assert their influence over everyone, but over women specifically. And that just makes me sad, you know, to see that term, that biblical term, distorted in such a way, when in reality it's just defining like a family unit and you know, a group of people that love each other and are essentially doing their best to live out good lives, be Christ-like, and secure their place in the kingdom, God willing, at the end of their lives. And it's just sad that it's such a polarizing thing now.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it need not be that way. I think the more you get into the macro, that's where it becomes less personalized for people.
Right.
And when you dehumanize a concept, it becomes a lot easier to demonize it.
Right.
But if you kind of shrink that macro back down and you just acknowledge it, like we just defined our terms, like, well, that's your family. Well, now the responsibility goes back on every individual person. It's like, what is it about your relationship with patriarchy that if you're truly wrestling with that or struggling with that, or you want to like tear it down, like, what does that say about you?
Right.
In terms of the status of your relationship with your own family?
Right.
You know, and I think it's an important reflection for people to just realize, like, if you've got a whole family unit that's like got dominion over an aspect of this world, and you guys are crushing it, you're doing good, you're virtuous, you're caring for each other and tending to the land and each other well, like, you just don't have those problems.
Right. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, it's just having the mindset like that we are all children of God, like we are all made in His image, and that we all should respect each other. You know, like in the Bible, it's like, you know,
Moon.
oh
Yes. Sorry.
yeah,
It's like squirrel.
Yeah, I mean, in the Bible, you know, it says husbands die to your wives. Like, you know, we are living, you know, for those that are married, or, you know, priesthood included, you know, with the church,
Right.
you know, die to self in order to provide and nurture like that you've taken on, like, as a vocation.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I love that you brought the priesthood into it too, because that's like an absolutely critical component of reflecting on masculinity and family and, you know, Father's Day, right? Because I mean, Father's Day is for the priests as well. I mean, even more so in a certain sense than earthly fathers, because when you, particularly of course here in the West, in Western Catholicism generally, the priest is called to be celibate and then sacrifices on the altar his earthly fatherhood. He forgoes that strong desire and genuinely amazing good,
Right.
for an even greater good, which is that spiritual fatherhood. And, you know, but of course we know that there's a crisis of masculinity in the world today. And whenever you see something happening in the world, you can always trace that back to what's happening in the church.
Sure. Yeah.
Because as the church goes, so goes the world. You know, like, we truly believe with supernatural faith that, you know, Jesus Christ established His kingdom in such a way that the church is the arbiter, that is the Catholic Church, of course, is the arbiter of the graces that save through the sacraments, the 7 sacraments. And, you know, those are like levers. Like, there's this like spigots and everything, from Christ to the Pope to the bishops on earth, which are the successors of the apostles, to through the priesthood and the clergy and religious, and to society writ large.
Right.
And when all of that is a well-oiled machine and things are clicking and, you know, the messages are cohesive, the world tends to do a lot better. You have these like epochs of time where things are going well.
Right.
And then when, you know, the works get gummed up in the church, you end up seeing, you know, some tough times in the world today. And I think, you know, it doesn't take more than 2 brain cells to rub together for people to realize that we're in one of those periods where things are rough.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, like, especially in our diocese, but even going up the hierarchy to the criticisms of our Pope, you know, like, it's,
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of, yeah, well, that goes back to mixed messaging sometimes, you know? Sometimes that's the media's fault. Sometimes that's, and sometimes it's his fault. I think, you know, even our Holy Father is humble enough to admit, even a just man falls 7 times a day. So we're all subject to that, right?
Right. Yeah. But yeah, it's a wild world out there, and just, you know, giving the things that a lot of our community have been through, you know, especially at the hands of the church in some cases, like to see that there's still like this desire to have the church be like the perfect representation of what it's meant to be, you know, when Jesus left this earth and promised he's coming again.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, as a somewhat new, kind of like a podcaster myself, you know, reflecting on what it's going to be like when our kids see our art down the road someday, you know, assuming they do. Some of them be like, I don't want to get into all that stuff. Or obviously, if you're cranking out weekly content, it's like there's only so much that anybody has time with their precious time to focus on. But one gift that I do hope that my children pick up on as the ages pass is, you know, the courage that it takes to remain a faithful son or daughter of the church in spite of, you know, the failures and the shortcomings that can come.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest thing, and the most important thing is to realize that, like we talked about earlier, like we're far from perfect, and yes, we strive to be perfect, but there are going to be, you know, those situations or those particular sins that, you know, are going to affect your view or your opinions of, you know, not that individual, but of the organization or the entity or the hierarchy that they belong to. And I think it's important to separate that and to realize that this is God's church. This is Jesus' church, the Catholic Church. And, you know, throughout history, like, yeah, there are people that have infiltrated. You know, Satan's always at work trying to undermine everything we do. And he gets to people, you know, he gets to people in places of power. And that could have huge repercussions on the whole flock.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you mentioned our local area. Obviously, it's not lost on people. I mean, we're in the wake of a tremendous abuse crisis. It was basically like Dallas Charter 2.0. Like, in fact, we even had members of the hierarchy that were connected to that original scandal, like, and then it came here to Buffalo, which is just mind-blowing. I mean, if you think about that from like a spiritual warfare lens, the fact that there are specific demons that are following certain, you know, plots for the anti-kingdom that are trying to see those specific plots through, you know? Yeah. And it's up to all of us as, you know, children of God, every single one of us, from a bishop down to a lowly lay child,
right,
to, you know, to know who we are in the Lord, and to, you know, to throw up the armor of God and those shields, and to not allow the enemy to get in.
Yeah.
You know, because the battle is not with flesh, it's not with each other. You know, it's with those powers and principalities, those demons, in those preternatural places. And yeah, I mean, this community is still experiencing the fallout of all of that. I mean, there's 100%. Things coming out in the news all the time, right, that are, you know, connected to those wounds, connected to, the shortcomings of certain individuals, like you said, that shouldn't reflect on the whole.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you truly believe that, though? Like, how do you get to a place to say, okay, I'm willing to make that distinction, right? Because certain people that have been through a lot, like, they're not gonna particularly care about nuance. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, I think, at least for me, at the core, it's just understanding and maintaining the firm belief that, you know, number one, Jesus is the Son of God, that he came here to save us of our sins, and that he came back from the dead. If you believe that, which is, the core of our faith in a lot of ways,
Yes.
You have to understand that this is the church that remains from then. And there was doctrine established in that, and that doctrine holds true regardless of who's pope, regardless of who's bishop. So I think holding that belief in that faith in Jesus and in the doctrines that he set out for us as we've interpreted them in the church.
Right.
If you hold on to that, no matter how bad the world gets, no matter how soon Judgment Day is away, that's what essentially holds me through. And the fact that, the Catholic Church, essentially, we can follow that chain, right? As you've said in past episodes, we could follow that chain from Peter all the way up to our present Pope. Like, this is Jesus' church.
266
and this is
strong.
the one that, this is Jesus' church, and this is what we believe.
Yeah, no, that's one thing that I think it's actually come up in recent episodes. I've been having more, non-believers on or people that are Christian but not Catholic.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing. I mean, being able to build those bridges and to just share, and even if it's our differences, just to share in those together and to have a space that can allow for that. That even seems to be becoming a lost art in certain circles of society today.
Yeah.
But, with echo chambers and talking at each other instead of, with each other. And it's been really cool to be able to be that witness for people. Cause some people, they figure out, I don't lead with some of the challenges that I've been through that have, extraordinary circumstances that have helped, build my character and define me into the man I am today. But, there's people that know about the stuff I was on in the news and whatever. And then they find out wait a minute, you don't harbor any resentment. You don't you don't have an axe to grind against the church whatsoever. In fact, you're giving of yourself every single day, trying to figure out new ways to proclaim the message of the kingdom. That's a good thing.
Right.
Even I've had people that they're listen, I might still agree to disagree with you when the conversation's over, but mad respect. You know what I mean? And that's cool. It's cool to be able to convert evil and make straight those crooked paths.
Yeah.
And to help people realize that there is something here that people literally lay their lives down for.
Yeah, and at the core of all of us is we all want to seek out the truth, right? We all are uneasy if we're lied to, if we're misled. In our hearts, deep down, we all are looking for the truth. And I mean, we've all been on our own journeys to seek out that truth. I mean, I know even, in your past, you're well versed in many different religions and spiritual practices in your pursuit of the truth. And, similar for me too, it takes it really does take a lot of effort and a lot of surrender and a lot of faith, essentially. And I mean, faith is not always an easy thing to have, especially with our world and our society today, where there's no hope. You flick on the news, all you hear is negativity. You flick on YouTube, all you hear is controversy. You turn
Even
to the
within
church
Catholic
and there's
media.
chaos and internal conflict within that and in a lot of dioceses. And
Right.
so that faith and that hope are often difficult. I want to say charity because I said faith and hope.
Do
and
it.
You always, in charity.
The greatest of these.
The greatest of these.
It's funny. I did a AI give me a Bible chapter generator.
Yeah.
I was like, give me any of the 260 chapters of the New Testament. My wife and I are going to do some Lectio Divina today.
Nice.
Immediately it spit out 1 Corinthians 13. And I'm like, really? Okay, the stereotypical favorite wedding verse. And then, of course, as God's word always does,
Right.
we're actually sitting there and we're reading it and we're like, oh my goodness, the depths.
That's
I'm learning something new.
Right. Oh, man. Which makes me think of AI. I don't know if you've been following that stuff lately, to go off on a tangent for a second. But some of these new AI models and things that are coming up, where it's the one that just came out, the Humane AI Pin, it's called. And
I don't know anything about this.
essentially it promised to be this amazing personal assistant that you can have a conversational interactions with.
Yes.
everything's just hard coded. So if you just say like, play me some music, it's hard coded to only play songs that were curated by the owners of this AI system. So they're essentially pushing you ads when you're asking for.
Wow.
So yeah, it's
Adorable.
it's hard to find good resources, but
Yeah. No, it seems like there's always strings attached to different things.
yeah.
Yeah, and going back to what you said in even like Catholic media, it's like, dude, unsubscribe, man. There's like drama all over the place. Now, I'm going to say that, and then there's going to be something that comes connected to whatever we got going on, which is fine. But I mean, I guess what I mean to say is there is really not a lot of unity within. Well, let's just keep on topic here because we could go into so many bunny trails.
Yeah,
But just authentic expressions of masculinity, right? Let's just keep it on that. That means really different things to a lot of different like Catholic influencers, it seems like. You know, like you've got like, I would say on one spectrum, you've got like, let's say Timothy and Steph Gordon, right? Where, you know, like they co-wrote Ask Your Husband, and it's like literally they're referencing an epistle quote from St. Paul with that, Ask Your Husband.
Right.
And like, man, it's like throwing a Molotov cocktail into a party if you actually if you just ask the question like, should women do that?
Right.
And like, and of course, you know, there's plenty of nuance that can and should be, you know, positioned there. And then you swing the pendulum all the other way, and I'm not going to name names and then point out super loosey-goosey stuff and then like be the causer of drama here. But like, you know, you'll get other Catholic influencers where the wives are coming out and they're just filthy mouthed. Like they just drop swear words, like they get drunk on camera, like, and you're just like, at what point did you think that because you're super influential that like, you know, you're not representing the king of the universe? Like you gotta bring your A game. It's a privilege to be able to influence souls on that level. And of course, anytime you see a failure with, you know, one party, the other party can be held responsible as well in terms of, you know, man and wife, husband and wife, like.
Sure.
So, and of course, as Christians, when, you know, there's a hierarchy delegated there that the man is the head and the woman is the heart, right? You know, and I know people love my big fat Greek wedding, like, oh, the women love to be the neck. I'm the neck that turns the head. It's like, okay. I, as a theologian, I'm like, listen, I'll give it to you. Like, yes, that can be true. Maybe once you've reached the 9th level of prayer, right? Because actually, Mary, the Blessed Mother, is uniquely given the position of having the neck that turns the head, that is Christ,
right, in
the mystical body. So my point is not to try to like take that away from anybody, but it's like, don't misuse it. Like recognize it for the exalted nature that it holds. Right. And, you know, don't be like James and John going up to Jesus being like, I want to be in your right and left hand, Lord, like, without recognizing the cup of suffering that, you know, predates that kind of responsibility.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, where's the happy medium there in terms of authentic expression of masculinity? There's so many things we can dive into. We should get into our Holy Father too at some point, but maybe we'll just start with husband and wife.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, I'm definitely not a perfect husband, so I don't know. I don't know how, if I should
His wife's going to pour this over afterwards. Oh, enjoy your Father's Day. I can't believe you said that. No, I don't know. Actually, your wife is an incredible human being.
She is. She's the best person I know. Yeah, so I mean, I'm certainly not qualified to be giving advice to all the fathers out there or anything like that. But in terms of what I strive for, I mean, you know, we kind of talked about it over by the stream, was just being Christ-like, you know, really understanding, you know, who he was and what he did and why he did the things that he did, and just trying to mimic our lives after that.
I love the simplicity of that.
Yeah. And you know, of course we could add layers to that and specifics, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but I think that's the core of everything, and just maintaining that thought of like that you're the provider, protector, and responsible for helping get your family to heaven. And if you could end each day and go to bed and say, I was charitable today, I was selfless today, and I demonstrated.
Have you ever had a day that you can truly say that to your wife?
No.
I was selfless
No,
today, honey.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay, you're making me feel a little better.
But that's the goal, right? And
Honey, I crushed
to die to self.
What did you do?
And yeah.
Hey, it's Father's
what
Day.
are your thoughts
We
on
got to
that,
enjoy
man?
this day.
I know I kind of went in high level. If you want to try and kind of hone in on more application.
Actually, if and when I'm called to do that, I want to preface it by further commending the simplicity that you just brought to that. Like, so I'm in touch with the clergy in our region on a daily basis, right? Like, there's not a day that a priest or a deacon's not reaching out to me. Collaboration, sharing spiritual advice, whatever the thing might be. And just the other day, one of my deacon friends reached out to me and was like, yo, you need Brother Lawrence in your life. And I was like, okay, like who's, and I'm like, oh, a Carmelite? Okay, I really like how this is going. Yeah, anybody who knows where eternal beatitude begins in this life is an adage to Carmelite prayer, of course. So that's totally like my thing. And Brother Lawrence humbled me to no end. He was from, I want to say 1600s. Hopefully I'm not getting that wrong. But Middle Ages, Carmelite, very simple man. And like, he humbled me tremendously because like, he almost reminded me of being like almost like a Saint Andre Bessette or Saint John Vianney, like simple type of a soul, or like a little flower, right?
Yeah.
But his whole thing, like his whole soapbox in a sentence is presence of God. Place yourself in the presence of God. Period. Like
life hack.
At all times. And the simplicity of that is just like, as someone, obviously I can, kind of go deep on the intellectual stuff and there's a place for that. And knowledge is an important tool. It's a means to an end. It's not, it's its own reward, but there's, bring it to the will, right? So for me, I could be like, okay, yeah, we'll do that at the second level of prayer, shift it to the third level of prayer, effective prayer. Now you're in the heart, blow the roof off the ceiling and become a mystic, right? And here's the levels and the steps and the ways to do that. And then you get a Brother Lawrence that's just like, dude, presence of God, man. And I was just like, I really appreciate hearing that because I know that I'm probably more often going to run into souls if I'm trying to witness to them or trying to be Christ to them that are going to be able to digest that than, like this advanced blueprint and treatise on the interior castles meets Dom Lahodi's Ways of Mental Prayer.
Right.
So, just being able to show people through that simple example is extremely powerful. So, yeah, so I guess to take it deeper, I'll kick it back to you because I've been going for a minute, but I think the quest in the context of marriage is to just do that. Like, how do I be in the presence of God with my spouse? In, through, with, about, like,
yeah,
in the way that we are one, body in Christ together. So what do you think that would look like?
That's a tough one because I haven't fully figured that out yet. I think in terms of, practical application, it's just about putting time to do that into your schedule each day, right? Because if you're not dedicating the time and if you're not dedicating that consistency, then you're not gonna, then you're not gonna build the habits, So whether that's setting an alarm or, making sure that the first thing you do before you get out of bed in the morning is saying, your first decade of the rosary, just to have that acknowledgement of the presence of God. I think use of holy imagery and just placing things that, are constantly reminding you of God's presence is good. And it's really just about forming those habits. If you're just like trying to hit a certain number of, Jesus prayers or rosary decades, if you're constantly doing that, if you're using your free time rather than to daydream or, whatever else, like plan things that don't need to be planned yet, if you could be in the moment, be in that presence more frequently, and plan those instances into your day, I mean, I think you'd be more successful, and that's something I still haven't achieved yet. But
sure.
what about you? What about maybe things that you are actively doing that since you started doing it, like you've noticed you've been more in the presence of God, or acknowledging it rather?
Well, I mean, in the context of marriage and my wife and I suppose I'll reveal today that, I mean, you said present tense, so I have to reflect on that more, but developing into the present day, there was a lot of groundwork that was laid. Actually, I think Lauren and I talked about this in one of our episodes, but we did a lot of intentional, clearing of the ground, the foundation, before we built our life together. Like, we got on daily rosaries together. Mm-hmm. Like, we made it a point to get that unlocked by the time we were engaged, because, I just told her, I'm like, I thought I was going to be a priest. I'm most likely going to be a deacon, as long as you're comfortable with being a deacon's wife. Is that okay with you? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And I have this extremely deep relationship with the Blessed Mother. Maybe it is or isn't your default love language, but are you okay with daily rosaries for life? And at the time, she's like, I mean, that wasn't exactly what I was doing, but she's like, let me take that to prayer.
Yeah, right.
And then at one point, she's like, yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that that's what she's asked of all of her children.
Right.
So at a certain point, once you have that knowledge, it's really not even a hard decision at that point. It's just, it's not hard to say this should happen. It just becomes a matter of, how do I make it happen?
Yeah. And that actually brings me to, you brought up love language. I think discussing that openly with your spouse is huge too. Because everyone's relationship with God is different, right?
Yes.
And maybe you have to make some changes or compromises so that you can, coexist together in that relationship with God.
Absolutely.
So like you said, it's your wife took on daily rosaries, that's something that you've been devoted to. And, I'm sure there's things that you weren't maybe doing or privy to that really speaks to her heart that you're doing with her.
I think I should be doing better all the time. But actually, what we ended up doing today, that's something that we've wanted to be more intentional about, Lectio Divina.
Yeah.
That's something that really speaks to Lauren's spirituality.
Right.
Just cracking open the Word and really reflecting on it.
Yeah, so I think that looks different for every married couple. So,
right.
But that open communication about it is important, and that willing to, make a sacrifice in some cases to maybe do things in a little bit of a different way, if it means that you can grow in your faith and your love for God together. Right. While also doing those things on your own. If you have certain things that you might do with your spouse regularly, and then you have, of course, scheduling your own periods of mental prayer or whatever other devotions that you have privately too. Right. And just maintaining that balance. And I think checking in with each other would be good too, and that's something that I think that I need to improve on as well, is just being where are you at with your faith, is what we're doing working, do you think we could be doing more, just having that communication, I think it is huge.
Well, at the risk of putting you on the spot, what do you think presence of God could mean, even more simply than picking favorite devotion or most important devotion and checking that box or whatever?
I think that, it almost, it puts you in a state of wanting to please him out of love for him and wanting to worship him. And I think it, gives you a more charitable mindset. If you have free time and you're not thinking about God, you're not in his presence, it's okay, maybe I'll do this or that, some, time waster or whatever. But if you're, practicing that habit of presence of God alone and with your spouse, you're going to just naturally gravitate towards doing more charitable things or doing more things that will help you grow in that.
I like that as a mindset, because I feel like that almost as a precursor, lens to whatever else comes after. is something that you could wrap your mind around more easily than like presence of God means make sure that I crush all my devotions for the day.
Right. Yeah.
Because that can be more like, and I don't mean to caricaturize it in a negative light by calling it like a list or tasks or a checklist or whatever, but of course that's a trap that we need to avoid. We have to be on guard against from the evil one, that our very devotions can become themselves almost like whatever, like idols or these points of tension when they're supposed to be our unravelings, right? The things that truly melt us back into that presence of God. So I really like the way that you brought it like a deeper level with reflection on presence of God, because it just makes it more ubiquitous and easier to manage.
Yeah, and that resonates with me, what you said about, it not being just like checking the boxes. And I think that this is something that my wife and the feminine heart really helps me with, is that it is a relationship, right? Like, when you're thinking about your relationship with your spouse, it's not like you pull out a checklist each morning of like, I'm going to give her this many kisses, I'll make breakfast for her, I'll spend X amount of minutes like chatting with her, and then our relationship's good because like I checked all my boxes. Like,
I don't know why my brain went to a Tamagotchi when you said that.
Keep it fed,
It's fed, it's watered. It's got a place to go, it's shelter.
But yeah, that's why I really appreciate that you said that, is that, it's not about just like starting early on your rosaries and making sure like you hit it before you go to bed and whatever else. It's like those are supplements and those are beautiful offerings to God, yes. And we definitely encourage that. But, at the core, it's that relationship, it's that prayer life. It's, trying to work your way through those states of prayer and those levels of prayer.
Right.
And, the devotions will come separately. I mean, whether they're your personal choice or you feel called to a particular devotion, I mean, those will flow more frequently and they will be easier to accomplish if that relationship, that foundation is solid.
Absolutely. Yeah, and when you are at some of those higher levels of prayer, you develop the discipline with 1 Thessalonians 5:17, pray without ceasing. That you recognize what the mystics refer to when they say that even like walking barefoot, like Francis did it throughout Assisi, is a form of physical penance and prayer. Like there's ways to pray when you're just sweeping the floors. But I think for the vast majority of us who are just trying to like ascend the mystical ladder to get to that point, like they need a message like that of Brother Lawrence's to just be like, presence of God, like keep it simple, stupid, like KISS method. If I just always place myself in God's presence, whatever comes after, it's just going to click.
So I think if we head back like the way we came, or actually no, let's keep going.
Doesn't it go all the way around?
It doesn't, but we can get to the other side of the park.
Okay.
So we'll just go back the way we were going before.
All right. I just realized that I should have yelled, Jesus loves you to them. Because that's what people do.
That's right.
Who love the Lord.
So, yeah.
Yeah, man. The gift of greatest return. What could it mean?
That we can give?
Yeah.
Well, if the virtue of charity is God himself, I think the perfect thing we could give is God, right? So charity, be charitable with your time, with your actions.
I love it. Yeah, and I mean, I guess from there it just comes down to how do I have the biggest impact on the most souls?
Right.
Assuming that's what God's calling me to, right?
I feel like it's such a new, I mean, not new, but new within the last 50 years, like the way that we evangelize in a lot of ways is different just because of different mediums to do so. You know, we're not doing word of mouth anymore necessarily, or reading. I mean, some of us are, but you know what I mean, like with the internet and
dude, Dynamis lived on word of mouth.
Amen to that.
Yeah, but we're not bound to that.
Right, exactly. So there's so many more opportunities to reach a lot of people. I mean, even back before cell phones, it's like you were bound to your house if you wanted to talk to anyone else, like to sync up and meet up. And now we've got cell phones, we've got internet, we've got, you know, so many different ways to stay in touch. And yet most of the world like reports being like the loneliest they've ever been in history. So how do we explain that?
You know, and that's why I say, are you called to impact a ton of souls, right? Because I think some of us assume that because you can, you should, when, you know, I think authentic discernment requires a lot more of us than that.
Right, and that reminds me actually of something you've told me in the past is, you know, what we were speaking about devotions earlier, like there are some people that will, you know, choose to dedicate all of their prayer to a particular thing and be like a servant or sacrificial soul for that one goal, whether it's, you know, people in purgatory or, you know, just offering every petition directly to our Blessed Mother to decide for you how to use your prayers and your petitions, you know?
Right.
Like, what is that called? Sacrificial soul, or what? I know you assigned a term to it in the past.
Well, there's victim souls.
Victim soul, okay.
But, yeah, I mean, some of them are, their ministry pertains to, yeah, certain, like obviously we know St. Gertrude was big with souls in purgatory, for example. But yeah, I mean, victims, that's a whole episode.
Right.
That'll be another special.
Yeah, I think so.
See, because I have a lot to say on that topic. It's something I've been praying about for a long time to start revealing, because yeah, victim souls are super fascinating. Like, the question you have to ask yourself is, okay, but we're all supposed to be like that, in the sense that we're all supposed to be vicarious sufferers and co-redeemers. So at what point does someone get to say, like, yeah, I'm like actually a victim soul, as opposed to I'm just a faithful Catholic?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And are you made aware you're a victim soul? Like,
oh, sure, sometimes. Yeah, I mean, you look at, what was her name? The mystic of the Sacred Heart, St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. She actually experienced level 9 of prayer by the time she was 24.
Amazing.
Which is incredible. And yet, even then, you know, Father Ripperger loves to tell this one, like, you know, Jesus came to her one time and was like, you're a sea of ignorance. You're an abyss of ignorance.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, even at level 9 of prayer, like, you're still a finite being.
Right.
And you have probably the most to give in terms of being Jesus for others and giving God back to God in a way.
Right.
But at the same token, it's still like we are entirely reliant on him. So, but yeah, I mean, she was revealed in a vision, like, you know, this is who you are in relationship to me, and you have a specific mission that you're going to take on.
Right.
That was smooth.
Kyle Dean incoming.
My man. Jake McGarrett.
That's going to be a rich dusk tonight.
Yes. Actually, Jakey McGarrack is how I spelled your name last time.
Jakey McGarrack.
I did. That was on purpose, actually. This time I'm going to go with your videography name, though.
Yeah, I had to legally change my last name to match what you wrote in your title for me.
Dude.
It was a whole issue, you know, new social security card.
Leave it to my absolute best friend being the one and only human being I get the name wrong for. Love it! I mean, it couldn't have happened to a better guy.
Well, how many episodes? Forgiving. What episode number is this? It's bound to happen eventually, right?
I mean, this is true. I got it right in part of it, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. It is a good name. It's a strong Polish name, actually.
That is a strong Polish name. How you spelled it too. I'm sure they're both.
I was just so inspired by the spirit. You know?
Hey, I mean, we go to Dynamis or the, I think, now I'm calling it the Dynamis Parade. We go to the Dingus State Parade every year. Dynamis.
Yes, rolling up in our longboards.
Right, yep.
You know, as is proper.
That's right.
Yo, did you see the news recently about the Holy Father defending masculinity, though?
You know, I saw a little bit about it, but not a ton. Why? What happened?
I want to make sure we're talking about the same one because, I mean, there's so much stuff that comes out of the media nowadays.
Right.
But
hello.
Basically, he was standing up for the sacred priesthood. He was saying like, yo, we need to really be conscientious about who we're admitting into seminaries. Because those who struggle with same-sex attraction or who have, varying forms of, effeminacy as opposed to the masculinity that's required for this vocation.
Right.
Basically, they have absolutely no business being in the priesthood. And,
right.
You mentioned about how the media sometimes takes things out of context or whatever. Maybe he says something in a way that's misunderstood.
Right.
I mean, obviously, I'm giving a very, like a PG analysis, because of course we want to give our Holy Father the benefit of the doubt wherever we can, but
of course,
it was one of those situations where the media attempted to like speak on his behalf, like Pope-splain. They tried to like Pope-splain what he's actually saying, which is actually a very, very basic truth that the Catholic Church has always taught.
Right.
Like super orthodox, not even controversial, believe it or not.
Right.
Like maybe people want to make it into controversy in the 21st century, but historically a very benign thing.
Right.
And they were like, no, he actually loves it when, when people of same-sex attraction go into seminary. And it's like, wait,
yeah,
what?
I know there was a lot
of
misinterpretation.
He never said that.
Yeah, I'm glad that he did clarify and have a formal meeting about that because
Did he?
I know people.
I only caught the headlines.
Yeah, well, he did an interview right recently.
I didn't. When I say all I read was the headline.
Okay.
I mean like. I thought he gave a comment on a plane or something, and that was that. Like,
yeah, well,
I go Catholic medieval peasant model when it comes to my news intake.
Right. Yeah, it's like we don't necessarily need to know everything that's going on, but I did happen to catch he did an interview which I think with an Italian news station where like they were asking him direct questions like, oh, like people are saying that you have now given permission to bless same-sex marriages
because of fiducia supplicans or whatever.
Right. Can you provide clarification on that?
Like,
and he essentially said, well, no, I'm saying that you could give anyone a blessing as anyone is entitled to a blessing. I'm not saying to bless the marriage or the union. But
anyone who goes into the confessional box gets a blessing.
Right, yeah.
No matter what their sin they're confessing.
Right, but it just shows like, they'll pull anything out of context if it's not explicitly stated, and even if it's explicitly stated, it could be twisted and skewed through editing and, mistranslations, from Spanish to Italian to English, and, we all know things can get lost with the translation, so.
Lost in the sauce.
I don't think I've ever been over here before.
Nah, bro. There's like wildlife, shopping all around. I think I've seen a few different things.
What are your thoughts on all that? What are your thoughts on what you heard? I mean, I know you said you only caught the highlights.
Well, it's funny what you just said because I thought that came out of the 60 Minutes interview. I thought you mentioned Italian media. I thought when he came to America, he was like, yeah, no, you can't bless the union. I mean, that's just basic, but...
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, I could be mixing up. There's been a lot lately, but...
Sure, but going back to the latest thing that I'm referring to, I mean, basically, I think it's important for us to have our Holy Father's back, like, and thank God for the sake of his, like, enemies that he's so merciful, because if he was like, yo, you're going to try to say that I'm speaking heresy by like accepting someone with that attraction into seminaries, he's like, absolutely, because that would be he would be like basically a heretic.
Right.
If he were to teach that.
Right.
And you shouldn't be saying something like that. So he actually hunkered down even more.
Right.
Now, I don't know anything about the specific word choice and whether something is meant to sound like slang in Italian or not. That's not my dog in the fight. But regardless, he was basically like, I'm not going to be controlled by the media.
Right.
Like
right.
you're not gonna try to skew this into an ideology, because that's really what he's talking about.
Right.
When he says like, dude, there's this like concerted effort of people to try to infiltrate the seminary.
Right.
That's like a coordinated effort. That's not, we're not talking about, okay, you've got an individual soul that's like really struggling with something and they need accompaniment. No, you're talking about a conspiracy of people that are taking advantage of a system.
Right.
In order to, basically desecrate the priesthood. And I just thought that it was incredible of him to like stand up for authentic masculinity and to just say like, listen, like he could have just as easily, looks like we're at the end of the road here.
Yeah, looks like it.
He could have just as easily said, listen, Religio Sorum Institutio, St. John the 23rd, 1961, Article 29D.
Right.
It makes blatantly clear that, no one with that kind of a proclivity, even if you're not acting on that proclivity, has a vocation to the religious life.
Right.
And that's because if you don't have that earthly fatherhood to sacrifice on the altar with that heterosexual proclivity, with that gift to offer on the altar, then you're not actually making a sacrifice. Right. In order to take on the spiritual fatherhood.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not even Pope Francis has the authority to change that. That's why the Catholic Church has taught that. That's why John the 23rd codified it in canon law, which is a reflection of the divine law. And as we know, divine laws don't change.
Right.
I mean, read St. Peter Damian's book on Gomorrah. Actually read it. It's almost 100 pages. It's not a very long read.
Yeah.
And he's known as the doctor of reform. Like, he's literally the doctor of, this is how you positively make changes in the church in order to, to see her along.
Right.
To bring it to a better tomorrow, to weed out issues and problems. And he was basically saying, like, there's certain things that can't cross that line in terms of what is sacred. So, yeah, I mean, that was probably one of the most profound Father's Day gifts I think that the Holy Father could bless the church with.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, what was it, like a peasant...
a medieval Catholic peasant model?
Medieval Catholic peasant model.
Of news intake, yeah.
Where you're going to hear it, and, you should be informed about, like, major things going on, but...
Maybe.
I think what you said was... like, who the Pope is, and that we should be praying for him, and in a lot of cases, like, that's good enough for us as far as our role within the church.
Right. We have like a divine right to our adopted sonship and daughtership in the Lord if we just say yes to the Lord and surrender to Him. Right. Like that is our birthright as children of God, and you don't need to read any news at all in order to have access to that on any given day. In fact, even though this is a super special Father's Day edition of The Rich Dawn, if you haven't done your daily devotional prayers, shut this thing off. Go do that. And you don't ever need to watch this ever in order to become a saint. Right. Or anything on the news at all. So, yeah, I mean, I think once you actually have a healthy understanding of that, then the rest just kind of becomes maintenance.
Right. Yeah, and that's not to say that we can't plug in, and there are certain things, some certain people are more prone to, like the intellectual topics, and, we have theologians, like I know that you and Dennis G, like, you discuss these topics in detail for those people that, like, not to say it's curiosity, because too much curiosity can certainly be a bad thing, but, just a thirst for knowledge of our Lord in order to better ourselves in a way that we could, devote more deeply and more truly to him. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a balance. I think that the mentality is going to be a little different, you know, depending on what kind of person you are, what your predisposition is in life. But yeah, I mean, just to bring it back to the Pope for a second, you know, I think that that's the best advice. Like, if I had any to give, would just be pray for our Holy Father, you know, pray for the Holy Spirit and for his wisdom to continue to guide the church. And I agree, it's a great gift to see him reinforcing, you know, what the church has established through decades and decades of, you know, building up this law and this canon law in reflection of the divine law. And yeah, I'm happy.
And it's a holy safeguard, you know what I mean? Like, it's not for anybody to try to go in the media and be like, no, the Holy Father loves if you've got a certain attraction and come on in, all are welcome here. It's like,
right.
Sorry, no, the priesthood is a very exclusive thing. Like,
right.
it's not for everybody. It's really just not. And,
right.
And it's extremely disrespectful to treat it like anything other than set apart from the ways of this life.
Right.
You know, so it's, it's just the epitome of selfishness for somebody to choose to enter into a vocation where you're essentially a walking, living lie in everything that you are and do, if you're not being faithful to that vocation by having a healthy masculine sexuality.
Right.
You know, so it's deep stuff. I don't know, maybe according to some people that is controversial in this day and age. What do you think?
I certainly think it's polarizing, you know, not just the priesthood, but just in general, you know, of what's acceptable and what is founded in the truth and what's not. So yeah, I mean, we're always going to have critics from multiple sides from the enemy, and
right.
If we just do the best we can, pray for our Holy Father, live out our lives, and, you know.
I feel like I need to break the fourth wall for a second here, not the GoPro, but the fourth wall, and say, like, we literally just walk down there and then walk back up right away.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, got to protect our investment here, man.
Right.
These things don't come cheap, no. And there's just like random people walking. We're like, we're going to go this way now.
Yeah, turn around. We want to enforce the peasant Catholic mentality.
Just stay within your state in life. It's not hard. You know?
Yeah.
But, you know, all joking aside though, man, I really do think there is something to be said for allowing men to be men.
Yeah.
And allowing for what authentic masculinity is to shine. You know, like, this is our day, Father's Day. This is all about the men for once. You know, like, it's because a lot of people don't realize, again, going back to the whole, like, there's people who like struggle with patriarchy. It's so easy to demonize something when you make it into the other instead of being like, no, this is a part of me and who I am. But here's the part of patriarchy that no one ever wants to talk about. That man who rules the kingdom, or who, like, all of the decisions fall on his shoulders, like, whoever the head is in a hierarchical structure, like, the good, the bad, and the absolute downright disgusting is all on him. All of it. Like,
right.
So there really does need to be an appreciation for the fact that it's like heavy is the head that wears the crown, you know what I mean?
Right.
And there's a good theological reflection on that, you know. Father Ripperger talks about this so many times, and I've been meaning, if I run into him again soon, to just ask him, like, Father, can you please just list these? Because you never list them, and it just kind of looks weird. You've mentioned this in, like, 7 conferences over the course of many years,
right.
But you never actually list the sins.
Right.
You know, he always says that Eve committed 5 sins and Adam committed 8. And I have done a scan.
I've heard that before.
I've done a scan on St. Thomas Aquinas' works. Nothing immediately jumps out. Like, you have to dig and find what it is that he's talking about there.
Right.
But, you know, he does kind of break it down in some of his talks. You know, he talks, obviously, You know, the eyes are involved, the imagination is involved. There's like steps within the soul body composite where, you know, slowly but surely, our armor is chipped away, and Eve, you know, took a delight in the I was gonna say apple. We don't know if it's an apple, but in the fruit, and might be a pomegranate, I've heard.
Oh.
Yeah, who knows? Could be an apple.
Yeah.
But you know, there's the delight. There's the placing yourself outside of Adam's authority, like all those different sins that she committed. Well, then Adam comes around, and he commits all the same 5 that Eve committed, plus 3 more. So, again, you see how wherever the headship is, which is where basically the authority is loaned, because it is loaned, you have to go back and give an account to God at some point about how you used it or misused it or try to play some agenda to get yourself into the priesthood, whatever horrible things happen out there.
Right.
At the end of the day, men have to take responsibility for not only every single thing that's on their plate, but also their wife and anyone under their charge.
Right.
All of those failures are actually the head's failures.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to celebrate authentic masculinity, and, you know, just, wouldn't it be amazing if all mothers this year, this is the Father's Day challenge, if all mothers would just, or all wives would just go to their husbands, or anybody who's dating, you know, you better be courting, you just go to your man and you just be like, you know what, you are an incredible head. I am praying for you. I am praying for the fact that the decisions rest with you. I'm praying that you have wisdom so that God will bless you with everything necessary to make good decisions, and to be able to live by them and to see them through. And for all women to just turn to their men and just say, you know what? Happy Father's Day.
Right. Yeah. And to speak to that, and to speak to that true masculinity also, you know, as the husband being able to reciprocate that, like, you know, and maintain that partnership, and acknowledging, like, you know, how much it's appreciated, like, to be able to, you know, keep the family together and, you know, appreciate them as well. Like, I think that's like, that is the hack to a good marriage, is, you know, like that respect for each other, and you know, knowing, like, kind of what your responsibilities are, like, to take care of each other.
Well, that's the other dirty little secret that they keep from the feminists, right? The fact that Ephesians 5 talks about the husband laying his literal life down for his wife.
Right, yeah.
As Christ loved the church.
Right.
You don't exactly just bask in your headship.
Right.
It's like, no, I'm actually responsible for all of this.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it is certainly a burden.
A sweet
as a result of the fall, you know. I mean, we are destined to work and toil our whole lives, and our wives share in that toil as well, because, you know, we as the heads are responsible, and our failings are their failings, and vice versa, like, which is why, you know, just being supportive of each other, and, like, acknowledging, like, what you need from each other, and what the, you know, father and the husband, like, need to do to protect and take care of the family. You know, those are all the questions that we should be keeping on our mind, and to bring it back while also maintaining that constant presence of God in our lives, so that we're, you know, called and inspired to act charitably in all of those decisions that we're making.
Amen. You know, it's funny that you mentioned how the penance, the punishment that men had to take on for their failure in headship to their wife is, you know, working by the sweat of our brow and to toil with. I don't know how you feel about it. There's certain priests out there who say, you know, ironically enough, that's man's punishment, not woman's punishment. Woman's punishment is, bearing children in pain and travailing and essentially having to rear those children.
Right.
Some would argue that it's actually a failure of masculinity and why we have so many angry and depressed feminists today, because men have basically stuck women with both of the punishments of the fall.
Yeah.
That's...
Yep, our bad on that one.
Yeah, sorry, ladies. Well, at least for any of y'all who actually, force your women to do that. Shame on you. But no, it's funny though, because even the way we're talking about it, it almost sounds like counterintuitive, because the way that the culture shapes the conversation is women get to do everything a man can do, and they get to do this, and we get the best jobs in the workplace. And it's like, yeah, but there's actually like an entire army of Catholic women out there that are like, we want to do what the Bible says.
Right.
Like, we want to, have our husband take care of certain things and we take care of other things. And that's just how it is. Funny enough, that actually reminds me, you're Polish and Italian.
Yeah.
I'm Polish and Italian. I was reflecting on like good examples of authentic masculinity in preparation for this episode. And I was brought back to my grandfather on my father's side. It's 100% Polish and married to a 100% Italian woman. And, I remember whenever we would have family dinners on every Sunday that we would get together, the ritual in terms of the way that the family unit was, is that, my grandma would make it a point to, I don't want to, like, worship sounds like a strong word, but,
right.
but then again, maybe it's not. Like, if you look at all of the writings of the most pious saints and mystics, like, think of even like Pietro and Gianna Brettamola, right?
Right.
They write these incredible love letters to each other. Like, you'll see some of these Catholic saintly couples, like, the woman refers to her husband as my lord.
Wow.
Like, yeah, like my headship. Like, and it's meant in this like super like endearing spousal way, not in like a servile way.
Sure.
And it's just such a different mentality. Somebody
Right.
These saintly couples, you're probably hardly ever going to hear from them on the internet, by the way.
Right.
So like the culture would lead you to believe that this is very bizarre.
Do you want to give me a hand with this?
Thinking, talking.
Yeah. Right.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going on over here.
No, keep talking.
Yeah. But then I think of my grandfather and my grandmother, and my grandma like made it her job to like build up her husband to the point where like everybody knew that he was the head of the house. She would always point to him as like the leader. And like even in the way that she would prepare like meals for everybody in the family. Like if anybody tried to like help her do the dishes afterwards, or if anybody tried to like, do things that were like her responsibility, she's like, that's my responsibility. Wow. She's like, I'm here to serve you. You don't do my job. Like it was, and maybe that's partially like an Italian custom thing, but it's right. Almost like like get out of my kitchen. Right. Right. Like I serve you. That's my role. Right. I'm the heart of this family, and it's none of this modern like, oh, we're gonna divvy up the tasks and you're gonna do everything. It's like no, like right. It was the exact opposite. It was like offensive to her if you tried to do anything to destabilize the hierarchical structure of the family.
Right.
Which is amazing.
And yeah, and I think too that a lot of people like are only looking at one half of the equation of like, oh, like, like these traditional people want, their wives to be like in service to them, but like the reality is like it's about in service of each other, like man Absolutely. Serves the wife serves the man, and we both have different talents and different things that we're called to and good at, like women being as nurturing as they are and having the ability to be mothers and raise the kids, and, you know, men being able to work to provide for the family. Like it's a give and take of you know, mutual service of each other. And I think that's what kind of is lost in the message, is it's not like, you know, they're talking about like, oh, men like want to be the head of the household and, you know, all of these things. But yeah, I mean, like,
they turn it
it's
almost
a give
into
and
this
take.
like cutesy ideal that's unrealistic. And like the commercials that make the men out to be an idiot, and the woman has to swoop in and fix everything. Like it's almost like she's his mother instead of his wife.
Right. Yeah, and that's sad to see men portrayed in that way.
That's just unrealistic.
Yeah, and
real life isn't like that.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, there are those male figures that skew like what it means to be masculine. You know, I won't drop names, but, you know, you have these podcasters and these people that like are setting this definition of what it means to be masculine and what it means to be a man as like, you know, not what it is. Like, we're not here to put down women or to, you know, like exert any power over them. It's just about, you know, maintaining your family. And I mean, I keep bringing it back to this, and just doing your best to be charitable and get your family to heaven. And that can't take place without man, like we said earlier, dying to their wives and their families, laying down their life for them, dying to self. And I think it's unfortunate that's missed, you know, and that we have these male figures, you know, misrepresenting, you know, what it truly means to be a man and to be masculine.
Yeah. Yeah, it actually says in the moral manuals, like again, for the heady theologians out there, it actually says that the man has to be capable of doing every single function that his wife is doing. Because, not that you like, okay, if she's better at certain things than you are, it comes more naturally to her, somehow you're supposed to be on that level. No, obviously not that. But
sure,
in effect, if something were to happen to her, and you got to take care of the kids, like, you have to be able to do everything in that household. Now, it's a blessing to be able to delegate, you know, household tasks, right? The woman is the helpmate of the husband, but it's just a reflection for humility. You know, we've been in young adult ministry forever. We run into this constantly. Like,
right.
You'll get some of these younger men that are, you know, kind of new to the courting game. Maybe, unfortunately, because of the secular culture, they were like brought up that dating is a thing when it's not.
Right.
Like, you know, it's actually courting. And you know, things like how the moral doctrine of the church, oh, people love when we drop this one on them. You know, St. Alphonsus de Liguori, the moral doctrine of the church, made it very clear, like, if you're kissing a woman, young man, you know, in any way differently than you would kiss your own grandmother before the wedding day, that is mortal sin. Like, that is, you're hellbound.
Yeah,
that's a Molotov cocktail for a dinner party at Thanksgiving. Like,
right, yeah.
And it's like, and then people want to bicker and complain and turn it into drama. It's like, dude, just recognize the bar for how beautiful it is and get on board. Right. You know, you're not going to recreate this universe. There's certain laws that transcend the craziness of these last 100 years, where we see things that we take it for granted that are foreign to all of our ancestors.
Right.
You know, like, so it is hard. It is hard. I want to acknowledge that with all severity, that it's hard to shift in this modernist culture to a frame of mind where you just like are ready to lay down your life for that woman. It's not, oh, I'm finally dating a chick. Now I'm going to start lording things over her. Or, she's my woman. It's like, what are you talking about? You have to do everything for her that she's capable of doing for you.
Right.
Yeah. You're not off the hook on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad to, you know, have to like see this be constantly like put in our faces, like this battle of the sexes. And,
sure.
You know, like at the end of the day, like we all have the same goals. We're all trying to seek out the truth, and we're all just doing the best that we can, you know?
Right.
And, yeah, I think that I've had a new perspective and change becoming a husband and a father all within the last few years. You know, I was naive to a lot of things, and there's still a plethora of things that I need to work on to live out that true masculinity and truly be in service of my family and my wife, and, you know, being capable of providing, you know, the same way for her as she does for me in our own ways and with our own faculties. And but yeah,
Can you just accept the fact that you're an incredible husband?
I would never say that because it's not true, but I'm trying. That's what I'll say.
How about let's work to being able to say it because it's so true.
Yeah, let's work to being able to say it. But can we look at this view?
Yo!
Can we look at this view?
We should set this thing up as our backdrop, man.
This is nice.
Crush it out, you know?
Right.
All right, let's bang out this last 2-hour bit. And
yeah, we're on our final 2 hours here.
Yes! Dude, this is giving me back to the warrior to warrior vibes.
Dude, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Dude, actually, you don't know this. I'm sharing this live on this episode. Guess who the next interviewee on The Rich Dawn is?
John Thomas Ellis. Yeah! All right! Woo.
He's coming over on Tuesday.
Oh man, I can't wait for that episode.
Yes!
Yeah, he is a trove of
wisdom.
Straight
wisdom, and not just knowledge, but also experience.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's incredible to witness.
Yeah, you guys check that out, like and subscribe, because this will be familiar vibes. I'll have to throw a little 2017 interview shot in there. Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about how we brought a Buffalo Bill to a religious retreat. So yeah, look forward to that one. But anyways. Yeah. But while we enjoy the sunset, let's bring it back, you know, Father's Day special.
Yeah, man.
What are your final thoughts on everything?
Oh, dude.
What's your advice to fathers?
The final ultimate thoughts on everything. Advice to fathers is always place yourself in the presence of God. I'm gonna ride that theme to this show's conclusion.
Right.
What does that look like concretely? You know, it's gonna look differently for brand new dads than it is for seasoned veterans that have nothing to learn from me. But
right.
You know what I mean? But that's all it is at the end of the day. I think you nailed it when you said, you know, like, become God, become Christ for others, you know?
Right.
The first one kind of sounds megalomaniacal, but, you know, the second one, and both of them are equally legitimate in terms of that is actually what it means to see Christianity through to its completion, to its personal eschaton, is to become deified. And for a husband and for a father to become deified in their vocation means that your wife truly knows that you are Christ's, you know, hands, feet, you know, just extension of him, that you are completely and totally self-sacrificial in the way that you care about her, that you serve her, that you make decisions for her, that you walk with her. You know, and a holy woman recognizes what that looks like too, right? Like, that doesn't just mean, oh my goodness, he's this knight in shining armor that's going to do everything for me. It's like, well, what that means is, in effect, is that every decision that you make together as a married couple walking with the Lord is going to be for the Lord. So that means in the sacrifices that need to be made on behalf of each other, that's in the you know, those less than pleasant aspects of life.
Right.
And you know, I really focused on spouses, even though you asked about fathers, and this is a Father's Day special, because that's really where it all starts. You have to recognize that you are a husband or a wife first, and then a parent second. It has to be in that order.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the hierarchy's out of whack, and really all of those self-sacrificial things that you learn for your spouse really translate for your children.
Right.
I mean, like we said, they're so needy from birth, and that's all by God's design to make us into selfless people.
Right.
So, yeah, just try to become a little more selfless every day. I guess that's my summary for that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Do
thank
an
you for
examine on
sharing that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I mean, what about you, man? What is your ultimate final wisdom for fathers on this Father's Day of all Father's Day?
You
Father's
know,
Days.
I don't know that I have advice that I could give from experience, but what I can say as far as my takeaways go after our conversation and, you know, having some time to really consider like what we've been discussing, and it kind of piggybacks off what you said about maintaining that presence of God. And that's just, you know, be present to your children, you know, like make sure you're putting in that time and that effort to be with them, you know, whether they're young and you're, you know, playing with them as infants or toddlers, or, you know, whether you're older and, you know, you have a son who's his own man now. You know, we are called, you know, or daughter, we are called to really direct and cultivate like our children to be models of Christ, and the way that they do that is by seeing the way that we behave. And, you know, it goes a long way just being present, you know, taking that extra time when you could be doing something else. You know, we all have all kinds of obligations and responsibilities, but really dedicating that time to being with your children and participating in raising them, like coinciding with your wife, like that's the most important thing.
You know what, man? When you were saying that, I had this like image of, okay, be in the presence of God at all times, right? Like that's like the goal, to keep it simple throughout your life.
Yeah.
And like that image can bring notes of like, here's me, here's God, right? Like two vessels, one finite, desperately so, and one infinite.
Yeah.
Somehow being present to each other.
Yeah.
But realistically speaking, the more appropriate image in the context of serving your children is God is in that child.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like God is the expression of your child.
Right.
In every stage of life.
Yeah.
That you need to be present to God through that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the word detachment, you know, has given me struggles of understanding, like throughout my Catholic life, of like, oh, like we need to be like detached from the world in a certain sense.
Yeah.
But it's really about loving others, you know, specifically talking to your children and your family and your wife, like for God's sake, like loving them for God's sake. And like we all have, you know, our own selfish reasons to love people. You know, you love their personality, like you love the way that they make you feel.
Of course.
And, you know, like it's not to say that like we need to abandon those things or not consider them or not enjoy them, because I mean, God made the human experience. He gave us senses, he gave us emotions so that we could experience those joys of like, you know, celebrating each other and being with each other and like actually like, you know, having fun and joy.
100%.
And I think that, you know, just being mindful of like truly loving them for God's sake, because that is the most perfect form that you can offer to them, you know, that's a huge importance as well.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was trying to say when I was saying like, you know, the truly virtuous woman, wife, will recognize that in her husband too, as opposed to, okay, and this could happen to either sex, but like, you know, either putting someone on a pedestal in a weird way that's like not even possible, divinely speaking or humanly speaking, but like also then the pendulum swing the other way is just like, yeah, I mean, it all boils down to unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
So having a healthy recognition of what detachment really means is absolutely critical for the spiritual life in general, and certainly when it pertains to like, you know, spousehood and fatherhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. So, you know, let's close on a light note. What do you think? What are some suggestions that maybe we can give to the ladies out there about how to treat your man for Father's Day? You know, like let's close on just selfishly making it about the men. You know, we get one day a year to do that. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean,
what does that actually look like? Because sometimes they're trying to figure out what Dad wants, but they really don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious to hear your opinion on this as well, but
I need you to go first because I need time.
I will say, that one thing that I really appreciate about my wife is she always makes me feel like appreciated for the things that I do for the family.
Wow.
And it's just that acknowledgement, even if it's not verbal, but just like whatever it is, like whatever way like that you can show, like, and it goes both ways, like that you like really appreciate, like, thank you for doing this, thank you for doing this toil or doing this grind, like to provide for us, like thank you for just being here, like, doing the best you can, like in your vocation. I really think that gratitude is like the recipe for a good relationship with anyone, just being grateful for the time you have with that person, grateful for the things that they've done for you, like just to have the opportunity to be present with them.
Right.
So I think that that's probably what I would say is expressing gratitude and appreciation for each other. Really does. It makes it easier. It makes the burden lighter, to know like that what you're doing like does not go unnoticed, and that like it's acknowledged that, you're working hard, and that they are appreciative of that work. You know what I mean?
Yes.
What about you? What are your thoughts on that?
Dude, I mean, anything that I say gift-wise will be superficial because everyone's got their own love language.
Sure.
Some people like gifts, some people like experiences.
Right.
I remember one time when you like have to fill out those cheesy, like, if you get a new job and they're like, tell us some stuff about you.
Right,
We're gonna put it on our website.
Right, yeah.
Or wherever. Like, one was like, what's a perfect meal? And I'm like, a Delmonico steak and a Malbec wine. Like they pair so well. That would have been my answer at one point in life. And now my answer is different in that regard. But
yeah.
I like where you brought it, because it's much more transcendental. Like, just no matter what gratitude, like the gratitude attitude is like one of those ultimate life hacks.
Right.
Where if you're bringing it to God and you're bringing it to others and even to yourself, right? Just like self-love, it can just dramatically change your perspective on everything. And, like focusing on the glass half full at all times,
right,
as opposed to what could also always be there. And yeah, I'm going to echo what you said. Like, my wife as well, Lauren, is a natural at like, just if I'm present with the kids and we're all just loving each other and there's like all this joy and laughter and whatever, like she just has this, like, she just naturally exudes like tremendous joy and appreciation. Yeah. Because it's just like written into our DNA. It's like, hey, like, right, we are all here from love. Right. And that's what we're here to do. Right. You know? I love that. Love so much. And it just, sometimes it just, you don't even have to try. But yeah, for those times, if you're having a year where we're out of the honeymoon phases of our marriage, maybe, showing that conscientious effort of gratitude is definitely important. Yeah. Yeah, because the men need it. We act tough, but sometimes it's like, obviously the burden is heavy. Yeah. When the buck stops with you. Right. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. Yeah, and breakfast in bed's always nice too. Now, there we go. This is what I'm just wondering. The thick cut bacon, Okay, thick cut. That's dope. Yeah, man. And yeah, for some dads it's experience, right? Maybe a little break from the kids, but also putting it back on the men, like relishing in those experiences too. Yeah. This isn't just a day for escapism. Right. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I'm glad that you said that. Yeah. But I mean, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge all the fathers that are listening. Happy Father's Day. From us to you, we hope you have an amazing day. We hope you enjoyed our little escapades through Chestnut Ridge Park. There will be some interesting shots. I'm not sure how they all turned out. Oh, they're gonna. But the conversation is flowing. So. No, I mean, all the failed shots are on me because this is not my equipment. But I think we got it. Yes. We had some good handoffs today. Yeah, no doubt. And and thank you for suggesting this, actually, and for the gift of your life. right? Happy birthday again.
Thank you.
And but for real, for this opportunity to do this, and to just make it into a special moment where we get to also share it with everybody else is really, really cool. So happy Father's Day to all the dads. Thank you to all the moms. We couldn't be here without you and your loving support. And
Amen.
For everyone who's widowed or everybody who's in a different state in life, we're praying for you as well, that God's will be done for you all. And this one's for the dads.
Yeah. Thanks again, Kyle, for having me on the show. It's always a joy to be here. Can't wait to see what else you're cooking up.
Oh, dude. Yes, I know. Uncle Johnny coming up. And all kinds of other great stuff after that. In fact, one last spoiler alert. There's been a call from a father about a very special Rich Dawn component coming up soon.
Okay.
You heard it here first.
All right. I'll be staying tuned for that.
Yes, so subscribe. Do the thing.
Rich Dusk, everybody.
Rich Dusk.